Sometimes, what hurts the most isn't the mistake, it's the silence that remained afterwards. That moment when you look in the mirror and realize your soul is tired, asking, why didn't I see it before? After 50, the house gets quieter, the kids follow their own paths, and for the first time, life offers you something that once seemed impossible: time. But it's not the same kind of time. It's time filled with clarity, the clarity that comes when the rush is gone, when the kids have grown up, when the house is quieter, and life suddenly gives you time, but not the same time as before. What does it mean to live with today's clarity? While looking back at yesterday's choices, it's not about blaming yourself, nor about replaying every what if of life. It's about another kind of regret, one that doesn't scream, but whispers in the dark, one that appears when you sit alone in the kitchen and miss yourself. Not a person, not a place, not the past, but you. Maybe no one ever told you that this is what maturing is. Realizing that while you did everything to fit into life, life was already calling you to be whole. This video isn't about regrets. It's about what can still be reclaimed. Because it doesn't matter how many years have passed. What matters is what still pulses. What matters is what you'll do with this clarity that came late, but came. Because there's something sacred about a late awakening. It doesn't bring euphoria, but it brings truth. And truth sets you free. You're not broken. You're just tired of pretending you don't feel. Maybe now, with a more awakened heart and a more honest soul, it's possible to look back without punishing yourself, and to look forward with the courage not to repeat. Life after 50 isn't an end. It's a rare chance to live consciously what was once lived on autopilot. Not because everything will change with the wave of a magic wand, but because now you have eyes that see what truly matters. And that is the beginning of everything. How many times did I say yes while everything in me was screaming no? How many times did I accept invitations that hurt me, stayed in places that drained me, tolerated actions that dimmed me, all out of fear of displeasing? For years, I confused love with obedience, confused care with submission, believed that always giving in was a way to be good. And little by little, I stopped being myself, just to fit what was expected. Saying yes seemed easier than dealing with someone else's discomfort, lighter than bearing the unease of being misunderstood. But what I didn't realize was that every little forced yes cost me something: a piece of my truth, a trace of my identity, a spark of my presence. The invisible price of never saying, I don't want this, isn't paid all at once. It accumulates. It disguises itself as fatigue. It masks itself as chronic exhaustion until it becomes an emptiness we can no longer name. Have you ever felt that? That sensation of being surrounded by people, yet absent from yourself. That's what happens when we spend our lives wanting to be accepted and forget to accept ourselves first. When we live trying to keep others comfortable, even if it takes away our own ground. Today, with over 50, I would have had the courage to displease. Not out of rebellion, but out of loyalty. Loyalty to myself. Liberation isn't a scream. Sometimes it starts with a simple no, said calmly, with firmness, with love. Self-love. Maybe healing lies in something small, declining the invitation that doesn't make sense, remaining silent in the face of criticism that isn't ours, walking away from obligations that weigh more than their worth. Start like that. Small, honest, faithful to what you feel, because every true no is a yes to the woman you are becoming, and that woman deserves space. She didn't come all this way to keep pleasing. She came to finally be seen by herself. We learn from an early age to care for the kids, the partner, the house, the job, and we get used to putting our own heart last, as if it could handle everything, as if it were immune to invisible cracks. But time shows with firmness and silence. Ignoring my pain taught me that even silence gets sick, especially internal silence, the one no one hears, the one that settles in when we don't have the courage or permission to say, today I'm not okay. Today I need a hug. Emotional exhaustion doesn't show on the face. It hides in the details. in the eyes that lose their sparkle, in the hug that has no strength, in the desire to disappear just for a bit, just to see if anyone notices. And the cruelest thing is that no one taught us how to identify this invisible burnout. We keep stacking tasks, forced smiles, unavoidable commitments, and forgetting that life isn't only lived on the outside. There's a soul that also needs to breathe, a heart that also gets tired of holding everything in silence. Maybe no one ever told you that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's a foundation, it's ground, it's where everything begins. And when I talk about emotional health, I'm not talking about grand gestures. I'm talking about moments, about true pauses, about silent conversations with yourself, without censorship, without judgment. I'm talking about that forgotten practice, talking to your own heart, not with harshness, not with scolding, but like someone listening to a friend who needs to vent, like someone writing a letter to someone they love deeply, and only now realizes that person has always been you. It's not an exaggeration, it's urgent, because the woman who cares for everyone also needs to be cared for. And maybe that care starts with the simple act of allowing yourself to feel, without rushing to get better, to take a deep breath and admit, I have limits too. I deserve rest too. I need me too. What are you still doing to be accepted? That no longer fits the woman you've become. This question doesn't demand an immediate answer. It demands silence. It demands truth. It demands a reunion with parts of you that were left behind in the name of pleasing, sustaining, enduring. Maybe it's time to seek them back with affection, with care, with presence. For a long time, I believed that living meant producing, waking up early, ticking off goals, saying yes to everything that seemed important. The day only felt valid if it was packed. A full calendar was a sign of worth. But no one told me that too much productivity also robs meaning, that there's a kind of rush that looks like movement, but is just escape. Escape from feeling, escape from stopping, escape from noticing that the body is screaming and the soul has been whispering for help for years. The illusion that producing is living stole from me the pauses that could have healed me. It stole afternoons of looking out the window, silences that could have revealed things to me, slower rhythms that might have shown me what really mattered. Today, after 50, I realized that it wasn't laziness my body was asking for. It was presence. The time you don't live never comes back, and what I wouldn't give to recover those minutes when I was there, but not really there. Body present, soul absent, always thinking about the next step, the next project, the next obligation. Only now do I understand that living isn't about rushing to reach tomorrow. It's about finding meaning in the now. It's stopping for 3 minutes, breathing, letting the world keep going out there while you come back inside. 3 minutes with your eyes closed, 3 minutes with your hand on your chest, 3 minutes that don't fix everything, but tell your heart, I'm here with you. Maybe the most sacred thing in life is this, a silent ritual, repeated every day, just to remind yourself that you exist beyond what you produce. You can create a little space just for you, a corner of the house with a candle lit, a cherished memory, soft music, an altar of now. Not to pray for miracles, but to give thanks for the miracle of still being alive. Life doesn't want you to do more. It wants you to be more, present, whole, awake. Time teaches, but sometimes it teaches late. And forgiveness is one of those lessons that takes the longest to find a place in the soul. Delayed forgiveness doesn't just leave open wounds. It creates roots, roots that intertwine in the chest, that disturb sleep, that make the heart heavier than necessary to keep going. For a long time, I carried resentments without noticing. They weren't screams. They weren't fights. They were silences. Those dense silences that settle in the eyes, in the body, in the way you treat those who had no fault, or worse, in the way you treat yourself. There are pains that no longer hurt, but are still there. Those were the ones that accompanied me. Silent resentment became an unwanted companion. Disguised as strength, it only kept me from moving forward whole, because every accumulated hurt becomes a constant reminder of something unsaid, unresolved, not left behind at the right time. Today, I know liberation doesn't begin with the other. It begins when I accept that I can't go back and that I don't need to carry what stops me from moving on. Forgiving isn't justifying. It's not forgetting. It's allowing the story to stay where it belongs, in the past, and letting me stay where I belong now, in the present. And the hardest part, perhaps, is forgiveness directed inward. Forgiveness for the times I left myself behind, for the words I silenced, for the warnings I ignored, for the versions of myself I abandoned to be accepted. But the path to forgiveness starts there, by looking inside with less judgment and more compassion. Ask yourself, sincerely, what are you still carrying that no longer belongs to this time? You may have gotten used to that weight, but you don't need it anymore. Forgiveness is like dropping an old suitcase by the side of a long road. You keep going and realize that even the landscape changes when the weight lightens. And it's true. The landscape changes. The air changes. The body thanks you. And more than anything, the soul breathes again. Maybe it's not about forgiving to reconcile with the other, but to finally reconcile with your own peace. The fear of starting over doesn't come from doubt. It comes from the gaze of others, from the judgment hidden between the lines, from the smiles that don't support, from the silences that disapprove. For a long time, I postponed sincere desires because I was afraid of seeming ridiculous, afraid of hearing that it was already too late, afraid of not being taken seriously. And in that time, while I waited for the world's permission, my own will went quiet, and I drifted away from what made me feel alive. It's strange to realize how much the fear of being judged has the power to disconnect us from who we are. We start living an edited, restrained, fitted version of ourselves. And without noticing, we leave pieces of ourselves along the way, always in the name of being accepted, understood, praised. But one day, it gets exhausting. Exhausting to smile through what hurts. Exhausting to follow a path that doesn't have your name on it. Exhausting to pretend the desire has passed when it still pulses. Starting over, for many, seems like weakness. But now I know, starting over is a sacred act. It's a gesture of faith, of intimate resistance, of loyalty to your own soul. The day I realized that being faithful to my truth was the greatest act of courage, everything changed, not outside of, but inside. And when it changes within, the outside world doesn't feel as frightening, because the strength that is born from reconnecting with your own essence no longer depends on approval. It is never ridiculous to try again, never foolish to change direction, never too late to start something that brings you closer to yourself. If there's an old dream that still breathes, even silently, it deserves to be heard. Maybe it doesn't need urgency, but it does need presence. Don't focus on the result. Focus on the gesture. Focus on the woman you become when you decide not to abandon what matters. Sometimes, the first step isn't external. It's internal. It's recognizing the desire. It's writing it down. It's admitting, this still lives in me. And that recognition is already a beginning, an intimate beginning. And because of that, a deep one. For a long time, I wanted to go back in time, back to moments that slipped away, back to interrupted conversations, postponed gestures, rushed choices. But time is faithful to its path. It doesn't go backwards. It only moves on, silently, with no returns. And it was in that silence that I understood. It's not about changing the past, but about not repeating it in silence. Not with the same mistakes, nor with the same absences. But most importantly, not with the same lack of inner listening. Each regret holds a story, and each story carries a seed. If I embrace it, it blooms into wisdom. If I run from it, it rots into guilt. Life after 50 is not an end. It's a calling, an invitation without fanfare, but with depth. It's the first chapter with awakened eyes, with a body that asks for calm, but a soul that still cries out, I want to live. But this time, with truth. Look back with tenderness. Look forward with courage. And look within with honesty. You don't need to erase what you've lived, but you can choose how to keep living from now on. The most transformative action isn't grand. It's intimate. It's yours. It's when you decide, in the silence of your ordinary day, that you're going to write a new story with the hands you have today. Call to action. So before moving on to the next task of the day, pause for a moment, close your eyes, and ask gently, what still pulses within me? If a name, a desire, a memory comes, don't ignore it. Write it down, record it, honor it. Because you still have time. Time to come back to yourself. Time to give voice to what stayed quiet. Time to say, now, yes, I am me.